Welcome to this week's special episode of 10 Minute Talks. Diego decided to take a break from interviewing this week and was the featured guest on the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I've put together a few of my favorite moments from the podcast here, but be sure to check out the full interview on James and Keith's channel.
Diego, welcome to the show. We are excited to have you here.
Yes.
Talk about all things real estate and fintech and mortgage and news, because you guys are a news source, which is going to make it fun to talk about today.
So really glad to be on the show and join you two guys. I think we'll have a really fun conversation. Yes. I'm Diego Sanchez. I am now the president of HousingWire and HW Media.
Congrats.
Congrats. Thank you. Really excited about the promotion. And been with the company for 5 years. And most of that time was in the chief operating officer role. So a lot of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis isn't going to change. It's just going to be more so, and more of the business under my purview. So before joining HW Media and Clayton Collins, who's our CEO, I had a pretty long career in business to consumer media, running various businesses at various companies. And then before that, I was in investment banking for a couple of years. And then at the start of my career, I was actually in education, for-profit and nonprofit education. So I used business school to do a career switcheroo, and have been in media ever since.
All right, let's dive in. So tell us about HW Media. And if I have my facts straight, and tell me if I'm off, you guys were founded in 2016. Is that right?
Yep.
You acquired HousingWire.
HW Media as the holding company that Clayton Collins is our CEO.
Yep.
Used to purchase HousingWire. HousingWire has been around since 2008.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you purchased HousingWire and you went on an acquisition spree, it looks like, after that. So you've got Real Trends, Altos Research, and a few others. Am I correct with that as well?
Yeah, we've also bought Reverse Mortgage Daily, which is a news site that covers the reverse mortgage ecosystem.
So you guys have acquired all of these businesses. What's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish and differentiate in the space?
Yeah, so we're really trying to be the premier media and information services company that covers the housing industry in the United States, and maybe eventually globally, but definitely first in the United States. And what that means is not just covering one of the verticals in the housing ecosystem. So not just focusing on real estate or mortgage or title or appraisal and valuation or home building, but really cover the whole ecosystem. Because if you look at the major players and the major companies in the space, they're not thinking about it like real estate versus mortgage. They're thinking about the whole transaction of buying and selling a home. And so we really want to cover that. And there's a lot happening in each vertical, but there's a lot happening, maybe even more happening at the intersection of those different verticals. So
the cross-pollination.
Yeah, we think it's just really, really important. And another key aspect, and this was a big reason for the Altos Research acquisition, we really want to bring our audience great data and insights. And we think that there's a lot of companies out there that cover real estate or mortgage or maybe try to cover the ecosystem like we do. But nobody's really integrating proprietary data, strategic data in a meaningful way into that coverage. And so that's a big part of our strategy.
What's interesting, I was going to say, is you guys are doing something different this year. I think it's this year. I could be wrong, but you're blending the mortgage conference and the real estate conference into one. It's called The Gathering. And you're trying to bridge those two, which I'm going to ask these questions because it's where I wanted to go based upon the background. But I find it's interesting to me that you're not siloing people into industries. You're saying, look, the consumer doesn't give a shit that you're a realtor and you're a mortgage loan officer. Like you need to work hand in hand. You're almost trying to create a seamless experience through the conference, which I think is a new approach. So
yeah, like you said, the consumer does not give a shit. And actually, well, they give a shit because it's too complicated and annoying and
yeah,
time consuming.
I meant
Right?
like, yeah,
Yeah.
they don't
So
see
like,
it as separate.
so and my lens, like I have no background in housing before 5 years ago, except for buying and selling, my own home.
Yeah.
That process was ridiculous, like ridiculously bad in terms of a consumer experience. And there's just no need for that amount of paperwork. There's no need for how long it took. There's no need to have all these different folks that I'm talking to as part of it. And by the way, like there's this title thing that happens at the end. I had no idea what that was when I got to that room. And so there's this weird guy that shows up to do an appraisal. Like it is a really weird process for the consumer. And so that's the lens that I came into housing with. And I think it's just really important that executives across these different verticals put their heads together on a regular basis and think about like, what does the consumer want out of this transaction? And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. We're bringing our 2 executive events together. We had one called HousingWire Annual that was focused on mortgage. We had another called The Gathering of Eagles, which was focused on real estate executives. So all coming together under The Gathering. That'll be in late April in Scottsdale, Arizona. But we're not just doing that in terms of bringing these verticals together. So we acquired RealTrends a couple years ago, and it operated as an independent and separate news site for real estate for a couple of years post our acquisition. But we very recently have integrated RealTrends News into the main HousingWire site because that's where all of our audience is, and that's where all of the real estate agents are, right? We might be a legacy mortgage publication, but like real estate agents have been coming to us for years.
Well, let's cover some headlines because there aren't any. What's your take on? I mean, obviously, in the past week, there's the American Real Estate Association that's come out with Jason and Mauricio saying they want to create something new from NAR. What's your take? What's your opinion on all of this so far?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I need to learn more about that effort. I feel like I don't know very much about it, and I'm not sure the industry knows very much about it yet. It's a little bit of a new concept, and a little bit of a flash. It feels like a little bit of a flash in the pan right now. So we'll see if there's any longevity to it. I'm also not ready to give up on NAR because I think that there could be a really powerful organization there if they just get to the like advocating for the realtor and helping realtors figure out what's next and what it means to be successful in this changing industry. With low inventory, high prices, like those are going to be baked in for a long time. And so you got to figure out how you're going to evolve and still win your fair share of deals. I'm not ready to give up on NAR. I think, I hope to see something interesting and positive happen with whoever they name as their permanent CEO. I don't know if Nakia Wright is going to eventually be that, or if it's going to be someone else. But yeah, they just need a big advocate for the realtor and somebody that's going to be willing to fight a little bit. Because
do you think they should stick with someone like Nakia? When I use her as an example as somebody from outside the industry to reshape the association, or do you think they should hire somebody within the industry? What's your take?
I think it could be pretty interesting to bring someone in, maybe from one of the state associations that's doing well and that maybe is a little bit more forward-looking and kind of fighting for their member. I don't know who that could be. There's some big state realtor associations across the country, some of which are progressive and some of which aren't. But that could be interesting. An outsider is interesting because maybe they'll bring the lens of like, you got to get to it. This industry is kind of leaving you behind a little bit with some of these battles that are taking place. So maybe an outsider could see that a little bit more clearly than an insider. So I don't know. It's really tough to say.
Is there any chance you think of NAR going away because they're not staying relevant? Do you actually? A lot of people are saying that. Do you think that's?
I think if they don't like shape up really quickly and figure out what's happening with these lawsuits and how they're going to settle, because I think they probably have to settle, and don't start figuring out how they're going to be an advocate for the realtor and what the realtor needs to become to be competitive. I don't know why you would pay those annual dues if you're not getting your money's worth from it. And I feel like there are a lot of realtors right now who don't feel like they're getting their money's worth.
I really want to get into this part because you guys are really doing a great job of this. So you're covering mortgage and fintech, and I love the tie-in between residential and all of this. So what significant changes do you see coming? Let me ask this differently. What do you see coming from fintech and mortgage that might come into real estate and disrupt it? That makes sense. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's looking in the space, but we're not looking over here. So,
yeah, I mean, just an easier transaction, and whether that is digitally enabled, less paperwork. If I want to notarize remotely as opposed to having to track someone down, I can do that. I think all aspects of the transaction have room to improve and get smoother, more digital. And so there's just a lot of tech because mortgage is so complicated and so highly regulated. There's just a lot of tech that's been brought to bear that helps smooth out the transaction. And I think that when you link up what's happening in real estate with what's happening in mortgage and then title, and then, oh, by the way, appraisal, like if you can have a smoother transaction that is a little bit more end to end and seamless. I don't know if it'll ever be fully seamless because I do like the idea of having a real estate advisor and a mortgage advisor. I think they can bring complementary skills and they can be a really dynamic duo for the consumer. They just need to collaborate better, and it needs to be a better handoff.
All right. Last question. Yep. We always end on this. So if you were an agent or a brokerage, what's the one thing you'd implement in your business today to drive it forward for 2024?
Oh my goodness. It would probably have to do with, and James does this a lot, I know, but like really understanding the value of the buyer's agent and making sure that you are presenting that in every conversation that you have with a potential buyer who's gonna bring you on. That we've got to get that pitch down pat. It's got to be really good. And again, the flight to quality thing, the brokerages that implement that well are going to be the ones who win over the next 12 to 24 months. And I think that's a really good thing. So like really understanding the value of the buyer's agent and making sure that we're presenting that in every conversation that we have with consumers.
I love it. Yeah. That's awesome. Diego, thank you, my friend, for being here.
This has been great. What a pleasure. Really fun.
It was super fun to have you on and talk about, your businesses. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's really interesting how you're kind of bringing it all together. It's going to educate the industry better. It's going to make agents smarter, more professional. We're big raving fans over here. So
keep gathering those infinity stones.
Thank you so much for tuning in to 10 Minute Talks this week. And don't forget to check out the full interview in the description below.